Betting, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Bet with the Best podcast. Its mission is to explore better ways to bet on races, to seek out new, successful players, and to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. Welcome to the Bet with the Best podcast. If you came here hoping to hear some picks, you came to the wrong podcast. But if you want to learn more about how to bet on horse races, this is the place to be. This is our fourth episode. We've had 3 great guests already, and we have another great guest this week. He is a professional horse player from Las Vegas, Nevada. Probably one of the most controversial people on horse race Twitter. Definitely one of the most knowledgeable when it comes to betting on horse races. So I'm really excited to welcome Inside The Pylons to the Bet with the Best podcast. Hello, ITP. How's it going?
Hey, Chris. How you doing? Thanks for having me. And hopefully I can help with some things that people might not understand or want to get better at.
That's exactly what we're going to try to do. And I know you can because I know I've seen you definitely have a lot to share. I know you're a little under the weather, so I really appreciate for you hanging in with us on that. And let's just get started by kind of telling us. I like to have the guests sort of give what I call their horse player origin story. You know, how did you get into the game, and how did you get from when you first got introduced to where you are today? Just kind of that story about how you evolved as a horse player.
Yeah, I just started going to races with my grandparents when I was younger. And I just started learning from there, and I watched them, and I watched everybody around them, and just even at the young age, I knew it was the people wagering were very unsophisticated, and I tried to get better at it, and I tried to learn as much as I could. And actually, when you're younger, you have an open mind, and you learn stuff that you're not poisoned by everything, and you can actually learn things quicker when you're younger than when you're older. And so I watched them, and they bet the chalk every race, and I immediately knew that was wrong. So I just started learning everything I could about the sport and gambling, and went to the races with them pretty much every weekend. Conned my mom into taking me to Los Al for the last race or two every night because you got in free once in a while on school nights. And luckily I had a friend also whose mom liked to go to the races, so she took me and my friend to the track once in a while. And just went. Basically everything was racing from pretty much 12 or 13 years old to when I through high school and went to college. And I just did everything I could about racing. I mean, my whole schedule was through racing. I went to college at nights during my junior and senior year at high school, so I could get off at 11:30 or so, and like you could go to college and not have to go to fifth and sixth period. So I could get off at 11:30 and go to Santa Anita and stuff when I was 16, 17 years old. And then I went to college after I was graduated high school, and that didn't work out too good. I mean, I went to the class and everything, but then I think my second semester of college, I skipped my finals to go to Golden Gate for a pick 6 carryover, and I knew right then it was over, that there was no sense going on with that. So that's
you had your priorities straight, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just knew that it was useless, that I was going to just stick to this and onward and upward. Yeah. So, and I play poker and stuff like that. I bet some sports, and I was interested in gambling, and I was, I was young and had no responsibilities and was crazy and living the good life at that time. So.
So were you having some success early on, it sounds like?
Yeah. I when I was just graduated high school, I hit a pick 9 Los Alamitos one night for 56,000, and on a $12 ticket, dollar increment back then. And yeah, I just, I was just, I always even back then, I liked the complicated wagers. Back then, they just to put in the pick threes and they put in a pick nine and they had the pick sixes. And I always gravitated towards those. Then I think maybe a couple of years later, they started with trifectas and superfectas and stuff. But they didn't even have those when I started playing seriously back in California.
So when you started playing seriously, how old were you then? And what was that process going from, just being a
Well,
kid playing at it to becoming a
yeah, I
serious
mean,
player?
I played seriously. When I was 18, I was playing seriously. I mean, I was betting a lot of money when I had it and not betting anything when I didn't have it and getting back in action when I was back then, I was very, very, very good at turning small money into huge money because I had no fear. And, I basically, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I turned nothing into, huge money, back then. I mean, I would turn, I can't, I mean, like 30, I turned $56 into 30,000 one day. I turned 150 into 30,000. Um, I rolled some change one day and went out to the track and I basically swept the card. I think I won 12,000. I went to Hollywood Park one night with when they had quarter horses. I think I was 2019. I had $100 bill. I swept the card and ended up with over 20,000. I mean, just like I had no fear, wasn't afraid of going broke. Just, it was just, I was young. I mean, and not only that, it's a learning experience. You learn how to do things right. You learn what's wrong, and you just learn from everything. And then finally, years later, when I said, "Screw this, I'm gonna just settle down and work towards just building wealth," then that was when I finally did it. Actually, to where I just concentrated on it full time. Yeah, for years I would just, I went around the country. I'd go to Vegas all the time. I'd buy horses, travel around the country racing harness horses. I do this all for my gambling winnings, and so that was basically it. And then I think 1999, somewhere around there, I said, I'm done playing around. I'm just going to settle. I'm going to just concentrate on this, 24 hours a day and make as much money as I can, as fast as I can. And that's basically when I said, no more. We're doing it seriously. And since then, it's been, nothing but everything I do. I mean, it's been my only source of income my whole life. So, but when I was younger, it was more of a serious but recreational thing with the money. Like, like I said, I didn't have any responsibilities whatsoever. So that was good. And when you're gambling, and you're freed up like that, it makes it so much easier to gamble when you don't have any responsibilities. So when you get responsibilities, it becomes tougher to do it. Just your time becomes more valuable, and your fear of losing for most people, I would assume, becomes a big factor in how you wager. But yeah, so that's basically my story.
So I want to break it into two parts. You have the start when you were younger and you were kind of really successful, but you weren't really applying any sort of money management. How were you approaching that? What were you doing that would enable you to have those tremendous days you described?
Yeah, just basically back then I worked real hard at having a great opinion, and I'd watch videos from the California tracks day and night, and I knew every horse basically. You know, I could I basically could tell you the horses' running lines when I saw them on the entry sheet without seeing a form, and I'd work a lot at that. And when you're only betting, when you're only focusing on you know two circuits basically, you kind of get a, I don't want to say, you just, and you're young, you're way more sharper about what's going on, and you spend so much time gaining the knowledge that you need to win, that when it comes time to bet on the horses, it's like secondary, because you already know what you like and you don't really have to work on it. You've worked on it before. So when the races come up, I can just focus on the wagering, because I already know my opinion. I don't have to handicap anything because I already know everything. And so yeah, that's how I did it when I was younger. I was just ultra sharp, and I was very good at betting too. Not nearly as good as I am now, but it was more simplistic back then. It wasn't complicated like it is today. And yeah, so that's how I focused on everything. That's why I just had great opinions and knew how to capitalize on them back then. And when your opinion is in the 1 percentile and your wagering's in the 1 percentile, it's not very tough to just be able to crush when you're right.
So can you like give an example of an opinion you would have back then and how you would bet it so that you could crush it, or a set of opinions on a card? Just, can you kind of think back and take the listeners through sort of how you did things back then?
Yeah, it was just having opinion and having no fear. I mean, like, there was a pick three one time at Pomona. Uh, I remember I liked there was a horse in the first race. I thought he was a cinch, and then in the next race I liked five horses, and in the last race I liked one horse. I thought she was a cinch, and I had $100 in my pocket, and I had no problem going up and playing a $20 pick three single by five by single. And the horses I liked in the middle legs were actually prices. I liked a few prices in there. And it's funny because a friend of mine came to the window. He says, "What are you playing?" I says, I'm playing some pick threes." He goes, "How much you playing?" He goes, I said $100. He handed me $50. And so I added his $50 and just played it for 30 instead of 20. And yeah, like the first horse won, he paid 13.80, I think. And one of the middle horses won, he paid like 56, and the last horse won and paid 7. And I got back 30,000. And like, just have to be able to bet like that. There's no using horses defensively, or and it's it's just a different thought process. It's that I like this, I'm right. I know I have a very good chance to be right, and I'm just going to play it. And if I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I lose. That's all there is to it. And that's kind of, like, I developed that thought process at an early age. And I mean, I was probably early 20s on that one, maybe 22, 23. And that's just how you had to think when you made scores. I mean, it wasn't so much grinding back then. It was just going around and making scores when you could. Um, even when you're betting a single race, you're just trying to make a score. Like, you're making a win bet, or you're just playing like deck exactas or something. Or then when the tries came in, same thing. Just play very shallow try numbers. On your opinion. 2, 4 units or something like that. And if you're right, you kill it. Kind of like Tommy does now. Where he's just laser focused on this horse, this horse, this horse, which isn't which back then, I'm sure that was the best approach at taking. But nowadays, I think things have changed a little bit. I think you need to take a little bit wider approach. Still okay to do the narrow approach. But if you want to maximize your revenue, if you want to maximize your profit and your volume, you've got to take a wider stance.
And that's a great lead in. So now you had success. You were an expert at least on the betting and handicapping, maybe not from a money management perspective.
No, definitely not. And didn't want to be. It was crazy.
Right. You were having fun.
Yeah, I spent more money when I was a kid than most adults spent. I mean, it was a joke. Like, it was just, like I said, I bought horses and traveled the country, and like I spent more money than, I stayed in 5-star hotels for months. I mean, it's just, that's how it was. So it was, it was more of a spending thing. I was just money didn't mean anything to me. So
you sowed your wild oats, and then you decided, I'm getting a little older. Maybe I ought to be more professional or take this more seriously. And that was kind of the next stage. And so maybe talk about that and what you did differently and how you evolved since then and how your play is different, and how the game's changed and forced you probably to change in some ways.
Yeah, well, that's like I said, I knew, I knew I could win any time, basically. I mean, you'd have dry spells and stuff, but you'd always make a score or whatever, and you just grind yourself up. And I remember I came back, I was racing my horses in Sacramento, and they had a break, their summer break, I think, or winter break. I can't remember, but they took a break for they were going to take a break for a couple months. And I just said, I've had enough. I need to just kind of settle down, make some money, get a life here, and not be traveling around. Like I basically stayed in hotels and rented friends' basements or stuff like that for almost, I'd say 12 years or so. I was basically never at home for like 12 years. And I mean, I didn't really have a home, my parents, but so then finally I just said, screw it. So I came back from Sacramento, and I stayed with a friend. I remember I had $3,000 in my pocket, and I went to the races every day, and I went to the, sorry, I should take that back. This time I went home, and I just took over the upper quadrant of my parents' house. They had 2 little kids' bedrooms upstairs. They had 3 bedrooms, and 2 of them were like little kids' bedrooms. One of them's for one kid, and another one's for another kid. They're like kids' bedrooms. They're real small. So I slept in one and made the other one into an office. And I just kind of barricaded myself in there. And I bet during the day, and then at night I'd go to the track. I'd go to Los Alamitos, and I'd play all the races they offered, and the harness races. And I basically did that for a few years, and then I had access to a rebate. And so once that happened, I just completely locked myself in the upstairs. I never went to the track. I stopped going to the track, and I stayed there for a year, and I says, I got to get out of here. I need a place to live where I can have, a bigger space. So I bought a place in Vegas, and I moved up here, and then I just started playing. I started playing from up here, and I've been here ever since. I mean, I've moved on. I bought a house and stuff like that, but I just bought a condo at first, and yeah, so that's basically how it evolved. And then for a few years, I played like I don't want to say lunatic, but I just bet as much as I could, as fast as I could, because my opinion was still semi-sharp, and the rebate was very good back then. And I just threw as much crap against the wall as I could. And because any kind of a good opinion, any kind of good wagering structure meant profit. So I just bet, I was just betting anything and everything from morning to night. And I did that for a few years. And then things started to level off a little bit. They started raising host fees. Rebates got a little worse. I became less sharp because I was only betting, not doing any work. And so I kind of had to focus a little bit more on certain things. My handle started dropping slowly, but I mean, it went up like 13-fold in 2 years. So, yeah. So, but now it's just I'm lazy and I don't, I don't have that good of opinion. I mean, I probably have a better opinion just off instinct than a lot of people, but I don't try to have a good opinion. I just try to do things that I know are right, like beating favorites that I think have question marks and stuff like that, and betting on races that I think are, I think that I can extract profit from, not betting short fields, not betting, races with a bunch of question marks like first time starters, stuff like that.
So that's great. Let's talk a little bit about that. So now, where you're at today, talk a little bit about how you do pick, what races or sequences you're going to bet and what sort of pools you attack. And it sounds like you really focus on betting optimally. Kind of describe to the listeners maybe how a typical person might play a sequence or a race and how you do it differently that gives you an edge.
Yeah, I kind of wake up, I see what's running, I look at the carryovers for the day. I'll focus in on those. If it's a pick five or something, I'll print that one out. And I just kind of look to see what my opportunities are for the day. I look at what tracks and the tracks I grab. If any of the tracks I gravitate to are running, I just say, okay, well, if I'm in my office at that time, I'll look at those races. I never look ahead unless it's a pick X I'm playing. I just kind of go race to race. I play mostly vertical, just because, like I said, when you play pick X's, you need to have a little bit of knowledge, intimate knowledge with the track or the circumstances or whatever, because those are kind of I need to know where the public's going. Verticals, the board tells me where the public's going, where in pick X's, when horizontals, you kind of need to know where the public's going without the board. So I need to know what trainers are going to get bet, what jockeys are going to get bet, what horses are going to be the focus of the public and stuff like that. So I've got to do work on that before I play a pick X sequence. Whereas verticals, I can look at a race with 1 minute to post. I don't have to do any of that. Board and the will pays and the exacta prices are telling me where everybody's at already. So then I could just look at the race, and if I see something where everybody's at and I say, well, that's not right, or it could be not right, then I'll try to find some tries or supers or stuff to play. As long as the field size is big and there's some depth to the field to where I could make a case for like the sixth or seventh choice or something like that, hitting the number or something like that. But yeah, it's just a different way I look at things. Like pick fives, you have to be sharp enough to know, because pick fives are all any bet you make because it's all pari-mutuel. You have to have an idea where everybody's going, because you don't want to go there. In verticals, it's easy because the board's telling you. In horizontal, you just got to figure out for yourself.
So let's talk about each one individually. Let's talk first with the more straightforward one, the vertical place. Give us an example, just hypothetical of, you see a race, you spot something you'd want to play, how you exploit that edge that you spot, looking at the odds based on your opinion.
Well, I know just people talk about variance and stuff, and how if you play longer prices, there's a lot of variance, and like that seems a lot of the things I say. That's the people's arguments. Well, you got to have an unlimited bankroll to do that. You've got to, you're going to have big long losing streaks and stuff like that. Well, they're wrong because they don't understand what I'm talking about. And if you don't like a favorite and your way to attack it is to bet a 15-1 shot to win, well then yeah, you're going to have a ton of fucking variance. It's like, you're going to, you might go 30 or 40 races before 50 races before you cash a ticket. And it's like, but if you understand how to extract money from the races in that you hate a favorite without having the variance, then you understand that there really is no variance other than your opinion that you don't like the favorite and whatever percentage that is. So let's say you have a 10 horse field and you don't like the favorite. And if you're good at finding bad favorites, let's say that 40% of the time in a very competitive race, that favorite will be out, right? Well, if you bet the race properly and you don't pick one horse to beat the favorite, then you can reduce your variance that way while also increasing volume, which both of those mean you win more money. And so if I don't like a favorite, first, I'm not looking for a horse to bet in the race. I'm looking for a grouping of horses that I can play tries and supers around. And then, it might be 4 horses, it might be 6 horses, that I all think have a shot to hit the number, that if the favorite runs out, I will cash that ticket. You might look at a race and you might say, oh, I hate the favorite. And 4 other horses can't, I hate them. I hate 4 other horses. Well, then you're left with 5 horses. So you play around those 5. You play tries, supers, maybe some exactas. And you play, you want to play if the prices are big enough, if it's not B, C, D, E, if it's not the second favorite, third favorite, fourth favorite, fifth favorite that you like against the favorite, then you can play some try boxes and some super boxes with all 5. And then you can go on your next step, you go and you key the horses that you either like best or offer the best value. If you look at 5 horses in the race that you like, and one of them is 20-1 and you like him equal with the 7-2 shot, well, you're going to key him for extra. And, if you like the 4-1 shot best of the rest, then you're going to key him because you like him best. So there's other ways to add to the play to where if you're right on your secondary tickets, which would be your secondary press opinion, that you're going to win more money. So if you do that, you reduce your variance. So let's say that, the favorite, I'm going to be right about the favorite being out 40% of the time. Well, if I play that way, I'm probably going to cash something at least half of that time. So I'm now cashing in 20% of my races with upside. And I mean, that's very good. And the whole thing is solely off the opinion I don't like the favorite. And cashing in one out of 5 races, I mean, that's reducing a lot of variance, but it's not reducing a lot of variance in what you can win because you can still crush those races, obviously. And people just don't. That's what I mean. People don't understand yet how to extract money from from good opinions. Like I said, they don't know how to expound upon. Sometimes they don't even know when they have a good opinion, and that's what people need to learn. And I still see people that have been doing this for 30, 40 years that don't quite understand like what their best opinions are in a race and which ones are valuable and which ones aren't. And it's just kind of funny to me because, like racing kind of keeps people in the dark on stuff like that. Like people, but when you've done other gambling games and you've learned gambling theory and other gambling games, it becomes easier to understand it in racing. But when you've never delved into other gambling games, it's tough to understand where the value is, in your opinion, because it's more just about picking winners. That's what you're taught from the beginning. So there's just, it's the betting side of it that's so important. It's understanding how to extract money from your opinions through wagering. That's the only thing that matters. If you have a good opinion, that's all that matters.
So that was a great example of how you extract value when you find a bad favorite. And it sounds like that might be a big part of, how you attack the vertical pools. Is there any other kind of scenarios that are typical that you try to exploit beyond just, a weak favorite?
Yeah, I mean, I'll look at races and I do like horses, but my first instinct to look at race, the first thing I look for is, first thing I do is I look at the board, look at the exacta pools and see who the favorite is, and then I look at that horse and see if I can see anything. So my first engagement with every race I look at pretty much is looking directly at the favorite and seeing if I can find something I don't like about him. And that could be anything. That could be change in distance, change in surface, layoff, change in barn, sloppy track, just something. And, just something that would add a question mark to him. Big drop, just, something I just don't like about the horse. Needs the lead, and I see another horse that's going to figures to be in front of him. Just a million things, I mean, it's basically it's just logical handicapping. But you have to be, when you find something like that, you can't. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no, well, he could be okay, or he might make the lead, or yeah, the layoff really doesn't bother me because this trainer's good. You have to have conviction. If you don't like him, he's out, and you need to bet accordingly. And that's what hurts people, is they just don't have the conviction to, toss something that they figure can win. Or if you look at him and say, yeah, he's got it, this horse has a chance. He might even be the horse you like best in the race to win. But you look at him and you say, he's got a 25% chance to win in my book, and he's 4-5. And it's like, okay, well, the field's deep. A bunch of horses can win. That's why I think he's only got a 25% chance to win, but he's 4-5. You just have to blindly hope that you just have to bet knowing that his odds and his exacta prices and his gimmick prices, which are going to line up with his odds, are way over bet. And you just have to say, hey, I'm pitching him, even though you might like him, because the odds are too low. And that creates value on all the other horses that you like. So, but then I will look at races and I'll like a horse. I mean, I'll look at a race and I'll like the favorite sometimes. And if I look at a race and I like the favorite, some favorites you look at and you go, wow, this favorite's good. And he's way better, but then you have to find something with him. So it's just checking boxes as you go down. If you look at the favorite and you like him, and you look at the second and third favorites and you say, I can beat these two, then you can play tries and supers off of him. And like I said, as long as there's field depth, and you'll find a lot of this, and there's certain races you find a lot of this in. You'll find it in like full field bad maidens. you know, all full fields with depth, meaning, like horses have a chance, the eighth, ninth choice have a chance to hit the number. These are all bettable races, and you can find flaws in horses throughout the line, and that's just what you need to look for. It might be the second and third choice you don't like, it might be the favorite you don't like. You need to know what you like, what you don't like. That's not liking horses is the easiest way to find ways to extract money in a race. Liking horses is tough, but it's doable. But it's just not as it's not liking horses is not as easy as not liking horses. That's the best way I can put that. And if you learn how to not like horses and learn how to find bad favorites, that's the easiest way to make money in this game, because it does two things. It automatically gives you value on your other horses, and automatically lets you go where other people aren't in the parimutuel game, whether it be horizontals or verticals. And if you can do that, then you're way ahead of the game.
So that's great. And I think probably, like you said, that's the opposite of what most people do. They try to pick, a winner versus trying to, beat a favorite. And
Yes. And when they don't like a favorite, they don't have the conviction to toss them, which is ridiculous. But it's like, what if he wins? And like I hear this, you hear this from everybody on TV and stuff. And that's why they're on TV and they're not gambling. Is because you can't have an opinion where you hate the favorite and you're still using them anyway. I mean, that defeats every logical and common sense thought of wagering.
so let's talk a little bit more about the verticals. And when say you kind of race where you found a favorite you want to beat, and you find the other horses you want to use. Do you have like a fixed way you play those? I mean, in terms of the bet amounts, do you vary the amount you play? If so, how big is that swing, and how do you decide how much or how little you're going to play? Can you talk a little bit about that? How you decide your bet sizing?
Yeah, it all depends. It depends on how many horses you have in and what prices they are. Just basically you look to play maybe, if you have 5 horses in, your first bet might be like a $5 try box or something for 300, and you'll swing in a dollar super box for 120, and then you'll start pressing from there. I mean, this is just quick stuff. Like I said, I'll look at a race for 1 minute. I know people don't believe this, but that's literally it. Like, there's a lot of people out there that can look at a race for a minute or two and they'll have a good opinion, but they don't instantly know how to capitalize on it. And what I say about handicapping is your first instinct's always your best instinct. It's when you start outthinking yourself and you start delving deeper that sure you might find something good once in a while, but most of the time you'll go off course when you do it the majority of the time. And so you just you almost it's gotten to where like I wager like a robot. I know exactly what I see. I know exactly what to bet. It doesn't take me a millisecond. It's like if when I figured out what I like or what to do, I immediately know what to bet. And some tracks I'll bet less than others. Some tracks I'll bet more than others. You just kind of grind it down. It's just you're like a robot. You just do like ratios and stuff, like $5 try, $1 super. Then you come back and press, and you might press for 5 or 10s. If you have 1 horse, you might press for 5 or 10. If you have 2 horses, you probably press for 5s. You come back and press for dollars in the supers or $2 in the supers, depending on what horses you have. Sometimes if you like 1 horse and you really hate the favorite, you might want to press for $4 or $5 supers. It's just you've got to teach your mind to know what to bet once you see it. And it just it just becomes like it literally becomes like habit. And it's like I said, you basically your mind, you train your mind to think like a robot, a computer. And you watch these guys like paint and stuff, and like they go up to the canvas and they just start ripping out a painting. And it's like I watch stuff like that and I go, I could do that for 50 years and never be able to do that, right? And but that's what you need to do in betting. You just need to train yourself to know what's right and know how to bet it right, and not worry about anything else but that once you've come to your conclusions. And it's tough to explain. I mean, this is kind of the area where it kind of gets cloudy, because you can't tell people to do the same thing you're doing, because I've been doing it for decades. So you need to start somewhere, but if you get good, you eventually get to that. And there's no set formula, because there's a million ways to bet a race, but you just need to know how to bet it with what you're looking at. And you need to work on that. It's something you have to work on. You need to practice it. You need to, you need to sometimes do it before you actually do it for real money, and then see how you do. And that's what people won't do, because they're figuring looking at a race, and if they're looking at a race, they're going to bet on it. But it's knowing what's right and knowing how to do it. That's all betting is looking at something, knowing what's right, and then knowing how to bet it. I mean, if I look at two things, if I look at two different books, and one of them's plus 105 on heads and the other one's plus 120 on tails, and I only have a limited amount of money, I know that betting the plus 120 on tails is right, because in the long term, that's going to give me the most profit. And I shouldn't say a limited amount of money, but I can only bet so much, where you could bet 100 on each and guarantee a profit. But if you bet 200 on tails at plus 120, you're going to be way ahead in the long run. You're making 20 cents every two flips, or you're making 10 cents every two flips, instead of, what is it? 5, 250, 10, yeah, way less. So if it's just how you split the money. I mean, it's knowing when you see it, what to do with it. And I'll give you a perfect example. All right. I don't even know. Let's just see how this works. But I'm going to go vertical. I'm going to go horizontal on this one. All right. I haven't even thought about this, but let's just roll through it real quick. All right.
Okay, go.
All right. Okay, when you see these TV guys put up the ABC, 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 ABC pick fours, okay? All right? That's 81 units, okay? So for 50 cents, it's $40.50. All right? Now, when you look at that ticket, it's complete crap. All right? Now, if you look at that ticket, you say, "Oh my God, that's the worst ticket I've ever seen." But now if you say, "All right, what can I do to make this ticket better?" So you say, "Okay, well, I'm going to take two of the races out of the four where I think the C's have the best chance to win." All right. So now you find two of those four races and you single two of the C's. And when I'm talking ABC, I'm talking first choice, second choice, third choice, not ABC like the Steve and Chris stuff, but I'm talking odds wise. All right. So now if you take that ticket and you say, "I'm going to single two of the C's," you now have two C's singled and two ABCs. All right. You reduce the units from 81 to 9. So you've thrown out 72 crap units, okay? And you've taken a terrible ticket and made that terrible ticket into an acceptable ticket. Not a great ticket, but it's an acceptable ticket. If you're wanting to play a race for action, if you're wanting to play pick four for action, or TVG should do the same thing. If you're giving out pick fours to your customers to play, you need to make that ticket better. You cannot give out that ticket. You can make it better by singling 2 C's. Not only does it make it better, but it cuts out, 872 of the crap units out of 81. So now you can play it for more. I mean, you could play it for $2 and, being $18 instead of 40, 50. So you're playing a decent ticket for $2 and you're playing half the money, less than half the money than a bad ticket. And if you're right, you can actually win something. And that ticket blindly will outperform the other ticket astronomically over time. Like the first ticket's probably like a 40% loser, and this ticket's probably like a 15% loser, depending on the takeout. But now, also the other thing is, if you can handicap your way to where you really like the C's and you eliminate the ABs, you can actually handicap your way to profit on that ticket. So in other words, if you just used ABC because you thought A had a 25% chance to win the race, B had a 25% chance to win the race, and C had a 30% chance to win the race, well, you obviously singling the 30% chance that's, where the other two are 8-5, 5-2, and you're singling the 4-1. Well, that's the horse you like anyways, but you're just using the other two because you think they have a chance to win also. But when you take price into consideration, you should never do anything but single the C, because the other two have less of a chance and they're less of a price. So you should obviously single the C and just throw the other two in the trash. So if you can do that, you can actually overcome the takeout because your opinion is good. But you aren't knowing your opinion's good because you're playing it bad. Your opinion's good, but you're playing it bad. So if you cut out the bad opinion and just single the C that's the good opinion, then you can actually overcome the takeout and win. I'm just using, just basics when I do that. But I'm just saying, when you can play a ticket that basically is median with the takeout, you can handicap your way out of it in spots. Meaning your sharp opinion can put you to the profit side. But if you play bad tickets, your sharp opinion can't ever get you to profit. There's no sharp opinion that can overcome absolutely hideous ticket structure over the long run. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Especially if it's absolutely hideous.
Well, that's what I mean. You're playing an 81 unit ticket that's terrible, and you're cutting it down to where you're playing 9 units that are actually okay. So not only are you playing 9 units that are okay, but you're throwing 72 hideous units in the trash. So it's not just correcting your ticket, but you're losing 40% on 81 units is way worse than losing 10 or 15% on 9 units. And you can handicap your way out of that. If your opinion is sharp, you can handicap your way to profit on something like that. There's nobody that has an opinion that can handicap their way to profit on ABC, 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 ABC. But it's kind of it's a weird example for that, but I think you can understand what I'm saying. If you play definitely such a bad ticket, there's nothing you can do to win. If you make that bad ticket good, then you can actually win off that bad ticket just by playing the good parts of it. Because there might actually be some good parts in that ticket, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And you're just saying that if you have a good opinion, you can completely destroy any chance of making a profit with a bad bet.
Correct. And the bad bets usually come from not wanting to lose. It usually comes from adding other horses you think have a chance but are lesser prices than the one you like best, which is just, I understand people don't want to lose, but I mean, when you're adding horses that really can't win you anything, why would you add them? I mean, I could see a person adding like a 20-1 shot and saying, I give this horse a small. It's better to add a 20-1 shot that you think has a small chance than to add a favorite that you think has a good chance, but you think has less of a chance than other horses in the race. How's that?
It makes
Because
perfect sense.
you don't lose any, you don't miss anything by adding the favorite. If the favorite wins, if the favorite wins, it's you're probably going to lose equity in the race. You don't need him. And like that's what people do. It's like, like I said with the vertical stuff, you have to have the conviction just to throw the favorite out. Same in the horizontals. If there's any reason to throw a favorite out in horizontals, you need to do it. And you don't need to throw all the favorites out, but there are races where you absolutely have to find a reason to throw favorites out. In some races you might like the favorite best, you might like another horse or two. That's fine, use those three. But if you don't like the favorite, you have to throw them out. I mean, unless you're layer, and this gets into the next level of if you're playing tickets, if you're playing multiple tickets and you're layering your mounts and you have some special opinions in other races, then you can actually use the favorite small, but smaller than your other horses, and only with the combinations that have the special horses you like included. You don't need to add it to all. You need to play multiple tickets, just like keying the horses that you like. You can narrow it down to where it's basically cost nothing. You don't need to add them in the whole play. How's that? Just on the combos that really have value in the other legs. It gets complicated. There's no do it all one-off method to playing these. You just have to understand what's right and understand what's wrong. You need to look at your ticket and try to figure out, what do I need to do to make this good? Or look at your opinion. And that's the whole thing. Like, I see these tickets played and it's like, I'm just going, oh my God, like, how could you not look at this before you played it and say, God, this is terrible? And sometimes you can't fix it. Sometimes it's just, you just throw it in the trash. But other times there's fixable parts of it.
I think I would sum up a little bit of what you said by saying a lot of people are making bets, especially in these exotics and the horizontals, where they're going to lose if they win, and they're going to lose if they lose. I mean, if their opinion's good, they lose. If their opinion's not good, they lose. There's just exactly no win right in there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like that's I look at people, like, they'll use a 3-5 shot, and then they'll use like a 12-1 shot and a 20-1 shot. It's like, you can't do that. It's like you're saying that like, I'm using the 3-5 shot equal with the 15 and the 20-1 shot. It's like, just throw the 3-5 shot out and hope you're right with the other two. It's like, you don't need a 3-5 shot. And use more horses in other legs. I mean, you can make a 4 square into a 6 square in another leg. Stuff like that. And if you're playing the same money, you know what I mean? You don't need to do that. It's just not. It's not right. I don't know how to explain it. It's just, you can't. It's just not. It's not. It's just not right to do that in a gambling game. I mean, you can't make a bet to where you're investing 3x in a race, and if the 3-5 shot wins, you get back 1.6x. You're losing half your money.
So you talked a little bit about, when we're discussing the verticals, on how you reduce variance but still kept positive EV. And so you probably need to do the same on the horizontals. You kind of made an argument for throwing favorites out, but how do you reduce variance in a horizontal play and still incorporate the kind of thinking you just described?
Well, that's the thing, is like each horizontal is different. And verticals aren't too different when you're playing full fields. It's pretty much cut and dry what you need to do. If you're playing full fields with depth, it's pretty much the same every race. When you're playing horizontals, there's so much variance. Sorry, there's so many variables to each sequence. Like, some races, some sequences, you'll have races where the lowest favorite's going to be 5-2. Other sequences, you'll have races where the lowest favorite and the sequence is going to be, or not the lowest, the highest favorite is going to be 8-5, and there's like 2, 3-5 shots. Everyone is different. You need to play each one different. It's so complicated playing. It's so complicated playing horizontals. People don't really understand the complication of them. What was it? Yeah, like one thing I can tell you, like let's say you look at a horizontal race or a horizontal sequence, and like, let's say you're looking at a pick 5, right? 4 races are completely wide open. Favorite's going to be 5-2, 3-1, and 4 legs. And then you have one race where there's an even money shot. Well, the usage on that, let's talk about usage real quick, okay? That combo usage and horse usage are the most important things in horizontals. Usage is what percentage of the combos on that horse, on each horse in a race, are being used. So just normally on a normal even money shot, you have to have, let me explain a little bit better. In every race, every combo usage on every horse, all the percentages have to add up to 100. Okay? Not like a morning line or anything. So each horse in each race, you can predict what their percentage of usage is going to be in each race, okay, on each horse. So if you have a normal even money shot, well, you would think it would be 50%, but it's not, because that horse without takeout in the win pool would be 18% higher plus breakage, okay? So what you need to do is you need to take their odds. So even money would be 50%, and then you need to reduce it by like 20%. So you have an even money shot would be 50 minus 10. So a normal even money shot in a normal race, its usage would be on average 40%. So 40% of the combos running through that race would be on that even money shot, okay? Just, run of the mill, even money shot, normal. But now if you get a sequence to where you have 5 in a pick 5, where there's 5 races, and in all the other races, they're all wide open. The favorite's like 5-2 or 3-1. And then you have this solo even money shot in one of the 5 races. Everybody's going to be singling that horse. There's going to be so much usage of that horse. It'll blast it up to like 60% or even more, depending on the circumstances. So like, you'll have the same even money shot in one race with 40% usage, and this even money shot will be 60% usage, just because it's how the sequence lies out. So now if you do that just in the terms, if your normal pick 5 paid 1,500 with this horse, in this sequence it would pay 1,000. So your pick 5's dropping from 1,500 to 1,000, just because of the overuse of this even money shot in the sequence, because it's how the sequence lays out. Because everybody's going to be focusing on that horse as their single. So you need to learn that you can't single that horse, if that makes sense. if that's, that's just one of the things. Like, you need to know that if you're looking at this sequence and you say, well, I'm going to play, but I have to single this horse, don't play. Just turn the page, look for the next pick 5. There's another one coming up somewhere soon. Okay. You just can't play. But now, if you say, okay, I don't really like this horse, I know everybody's going to be else is going to be on him. Every horse in the race, every other horse in the race, because this horse is overused, because of the sequence, not because of him, but because of the sequence is making everybody overuse this horse, then that is a great spot to be wagering in, to where you don't use him and you use others if you think you can beat him. So you're getting a huge bonus on beating this horse just because of the sequence, nothing else, only because of the sequence. It's hard to understand, but the sequence is causing this horse to be humongously overbet, even though he looks the same as other even money shots. So you need to take advantage of like that in sequences. And like, people don't really understand that. It's the parimutuel stuff I talk about, but there's just, when you look at a sequence, there's just little idiosyncrasies like that if you can always put yourself on the right side of stuff like that, you have such an edge over everybody else. I mean, just like I said, just think about that. I mean, if he's used 60% and a normal even money shot's used 40%, like that cuts the payoff down from 1,500 to 1,000. Even though the same horse is won, just because that horse is placed in that sequence in that spot, and that's what everybody's going to have to key on. And like, you need to understand, when you look at that you need to avoid the even money shot, and you need to attack beating him if that's your opinion. If your opinion's you like him, you just can't play because he's so undervalued. There's nothing you can do in the other races to overcome that. I hope that makes sense.
No, I think what you just said is really next level. And I just want to try to repeat it so that the listeners get it, and I make sure that and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying that it's not just an even money shot is an even money shot in the win pool, but in certain sequences and horizontals, because the sequence kind of leads everybody to singling that horse, it's much shorter in the horizontals, and that creates lots of value if you think you can beat that horse, because instead of half the money going through that horse, maybe 80% or 40%, 60%, but significantly more goes through that, everything with that horse on it. And that just creates value in every other possible combination if you can beat that horse.
Yes, he gets overused in the pick 5s, pick 4s, strictly because the sequence is making everybody overuse him. It's not because they like him more. It's strictly because the sequence is causing people to single that horse. If you have 3 of even money shots in the sequence, then that doesn't matter anymore, because he's not going to be the focus single of everybody else. There are going to be numerous people singling one of the other even money shots or 2 of the other even money shots and trying to beat this one. It gives people other opportunities to single. When you have 1 even money shot and 4 absolutely wide open races, the majority of people will gravitate towards singling this horse. And that causes them to be a humongous underlay in the horizontals. And you need to know stuff like that when you look at this stuff. And like I said, there's a bunch of little idiosyncrasies like this. I mean, there's so many of them. Like, that's what I'm saying. They're so complicated. There's, you can't be an 8-1 Chad Brown isn't worth 8-1 if Chad Brown wins 2 other legs. Brad Cox wins 2 other legs, and 8-1 Brad Cox is not worth 8-1. It's very tough for people to understand how much this affects your payouts and your bottom lines. But it's it's humongous, like over the long run. And like you can't do stuff that is not that is negative. You can't play things that are negative. You need to avoid the negative and swarm onto the positives. And you need to understand that it's not just not playing, it's not just knowing when not to play, but it's knowing when to pounce. And like I said, if you can beat, if you know that everybody's going to be singling that even money shot, and you think you can beat them, then you need to pounce. You need to attempt to pounce. Depending on the other legs. That's an opportunity. And when you're wagering properly, you need to pounce on opportunities. So you need to be able to recognize opportunities, not pick winners. How's that? Does that make sense?
Yes, and I would just, I know you said there's millions of these, but you gave a great example of where you can get that inefficiency in a sequence. Can you are there any other more kind of common or easy to understand examples where the odds on the board are a lot different than the odds in the horizontals because of the sequence?
Yeah, well, that I'll tell you, like, it's like, okay, let's say you have a race where there's 3 horses that can win, right? And you give all 3 an equal chance, okay? And let's say they're all like 3-1, all right? If two of them are Chad Brown and Irad Ortiz, and the other one is, whoever else, top of the line guys, if 2 of them are Chad Browns and the other one is a lesser trainer with a lesser jockey, okay? Even though they're all 3-1 and you think they all have an equal chance, I guarantee you that the one with the lesser connection will be paying way more than the 2 Chad Browns. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Would you say in general the connections get overbet more in the horizontals than in the win pool?
Yes. People in horizontals always gravitate more towards the leading connections. Like they have no problem throwing in a Chad Brown just because it's a Chad Brown, but they won't throw in I have no idea who this trainer is horse. Does that make sense?
Yes, it definitely makes sense.
Same with jockeys too. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. It's a harness example though. There were races at Pompano where you had 3 horses at 5-2, only 3 horses that could win the race. And you had David Miller on one of them, Wally Hennessy on the other, who are the 2 most overbet drivers in the history of overbet drivers. And then you'd have like a Mike McAuliffe on the other 5-2. And the will pays would come up for that race. And David Miller and Wally Hennessy would both be paying 150, and Mike McAuliffe would be paying 500. And it's strictly because of the drivers why everybody gravitates to those drivers, even though the horses were basically equal. And like it's a phenomenon. It's not so much in the thoroughbreds. That's a drastic case. But I'm just trying to explain what the computers don't do it as bad, but the public does it bad. And if you notice all the public handicappers, the public handicappers, the public ticket givers, they'll all do the same thing. Like, they'll all say, I'm using the Chad Browns and I'm using the Brad Coxes, but the horses that get left out are the horses that get underused are the non-Chads, the non-Brads and stuff like that. And you won't, how can I put this? The computer teams come in correct. The computer teams come in at most tracks and correct the win odds. Okay? But in the pick 5 odds, they can't do that. So that's why you'll see more of a sway towards because the computers don't care as much about Chad Brown, Brad Cox's as the public does. Does that make sense? So the
Yeah,
computer,
but
so the
they can't correct,
computers,
right?
yeah. So while you might have 3 horses 3-1, and you have Chad Brown and Brad Cox, and then you have another guy, the computers are doing that because they don't focus on Chad Brown and Brad Cox, and the odds are more reflective. The final odds of most tracks are reflective of what the computer's opinions are. Okay? Whereas the pick fives, they're definitely computer influenced, but the public actually has the public has bigger sway on the pick fives and pick fours than on the final odds. So that's where you'll see it. So if you see 3 horses 3-1, and 2 of them are, Brad Cox and Chad Brown, the one that's not Brad Cox and Chad Brown will always be paying higher. Not always, but 90% of the time. How's that? So you
That's
need to
great.
know. So you need to, like I said, there's just little inefficiencies like that, and when you're looking at a sequence, you just need to, like I said, you need to know where the public's not going, and you need to know where they're not going and where they're going, and you need to make your tickets based on that, but also incorporating your handicapping. But you need to handicap and use that and mesh them together. You can't ignore either one. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So give an example where you you can make up anything, but like where you have a handicapping opinion and you understand, where the crowd's going to go, and those are that would be like a golden opportunity to play one of the picks.
One more time with that. I didn't quite understand.
Okay, so I was trying to say, let's get an example where you've got the best of both worlds. You find the crowd's going to go one way for a certain reason.
Yeah.
And you have a handicapping opinion that is going to take you another direction. What's the best way to exploit that, like in a pick? How would you? Because
in a pick X.
Yeah, in a pick X.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like a lot of those are just one racers. So in one race opinions, verticals are the way to go. But everything in a vertical is one race, but you need to mold those 4 or 5 races together, or 6. But if you have a real good opinion that is against the crowd, you want to do horizontals as like a dessert and verticals as the main course. Just to tell you that. Yeah.
Right. Okay, absolutely.
Like if you have a great opinion in a race, it's very tough to draw that opinion out and it still be great after you add 3 or 4 more races.
So, no, go ahead.
No, yeah. I mean, if you have a great opinion in a race and you want to play verticals, you want to play horizontals, that's fine. I mean, that's great. But like the even money shot example I gave you, like if you don't like that even money shot and everybody is gravitating towards them, then yeah, that's something you want to attack in the horizontals, because in the verticals it's not as great. Does that make sense?
Right. So
Like the horizontal situation of where everybody's going to be going that horse, that makes the horizontals a good place to attack that opinion. But in the grand scheme of things, in just an ordinary race, if you have a great opinion in that race, you want to make the main course verticals. Whereas in this opinion, because of what I laid out, where he's going to be severely overused in the horizontals, you might want to make the main course horizontals.
Yeah, I got it. My question was more like your opinion on the sequence versus a particular race, but I think your answer was really good. I mean, if you have a strong opinion in a race, start with the verticals and then look, to the horizontals. Typically, this is a handicapping opinion versus the odds board. But
Yes.
then, but then on the sequence, like you said, there are some sort of unexpected or at least underappreciated inefficiencies in the way people vet horizontally that can be wildly different than what shows up on the tote in terms of the wind pool.
Yes, correct. Yeah, there are that's what I'm trying to explain. There's just definite spots. There's definite no-nos and yeses when you're looking at sequences, horizontal sequences that are strictly by what everybody else is doing or isn't doing that you need to focus on.
So can you like summarize? You've already said some, but like what are the most important no-nos and yes on those horizontal?
Yeah, like I said, there's just so many. It's like you need to have experience looking at a sequence and knowing what you can't do and what you can do. And like, I can give out examples here and there, but it doesn't it doesn't it's just something you need to just have a knack at seeing. I mean, there's just so many variables. I can't explain it. It's like they're so complicated. And like I think everybody knows that. I mean, I hope everybody knows that, and there's just God, it's just like you can't do this if you're doing this. You can do this if you're not doing this. It's just the whole it's just it's just looking at the sequence and then knowing what you can do and can't do, knowing how to expound on that, and then looking at what you're going to play and then saying, is this okay or is this not okay? Or do I need to do something different or I just need to scrap it? And, you know, I know most people like this is way beyond what most people do is they just go leg to leg and write down who they like. You know what I mean? And I I'm telling you that most of those people get crushed. So I'm trying to just I'm trying to explain that there's a higher level of thinking here. And And sometimes you've got to do stuff that you don't like doing, or use horses that you don't like best, or not use horses that you like to get to where you need to get to where you can be profitable. And
So
yeah, go ahead.
no, I just so let me just give a couple of examples that you can um go on about. So like spread races, what's the your strategy in the spread race? Do you ever hit the all button? Do you never hit the all button? Do you ever include shorter prices in your spread, or do you try to focus on, how what's the and again, I know it's going to depend on the sequence, but in general, like what's sort of the guidelines or the philosophy on a spread race in a pick?
The all button is wrong 99% of the time. There's certain times where if there's like a big carryover or force out or something where the all you can use all, but like I said, caveman alls are caveman alls are wrong 99.9% of the time. If you're playing multiple tickets and given certain circumstances, all is acceptable in very, very rare circumstances. Like all is one of the most it's one of the weirdest things that I can't understand that people gravitate to. Um, I'll give you an example. Here, just let me think this through. Okay, here we go. All right. Let's say there's a 10 horse race and you're using all. All right. Well, let's say that you have a pick, let's say that's like in the fourth leg of a pick five or something, and you have $2,500 worth of equity going into the leg. Okay? Meaning the first 3 winners paid X and you have X units left. So your tickets were $2,500 off parlay value plus units left. So you're now going up and you're betting $250 to win on all 10 horses. All right? Now, who would do that pari-mutually? Nobody, correct?
Well, I be careful when you say nobody, but nobody.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. It's
like
nobody.
Who would say, I'm a genius, I'm going up and I'm betting, I know what I'm doing, I'm betting 250 to win on every horse. All right? But somehow in pick 4s, pick 5s is acceptable. I even saw our man Swifty before I came on went all in a pick 3, which is like, oh my God. Okay. So he's betting, or you're betting 250 to win on each horse. When you use all in a race, all right, what you're telling me by using all is that you think, how can I put this? Is that you think that the favorites are vulnerable and the long shots that can win. Long shots have a chance. You're going up and betting 250 to win on the 70 to 1 shot. You're going and betting 250 to win on the 40 to 1 shot. Okay? You're betting 250 to win on the 6 to 5 shot. All right? That's what you're doing. All right? So you're telling me by you going all that you think that the prices have a chance and that the favorites have not as good a chance as they should. Is that wouldn't you assume that when somebody goes all?
Yeah, if they're going all and they're not waiting at all, for sure, that's what they're doing.
I mean, that's what you would think. If they're betting 250 to win on a 70 to 1 shot, they obviously think that horse has a chance, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're going all in a horizontal leg, okay, because that's what you think. You think the 70 to 1 shot has a chance. You think the 40 to 1 shot has a chance. You think the 30 to 1 shot has a chance, right? Because you're betting 250 to win on all, all right? You would be a million times better off playing verticals if you took the 4 longest prices in that race and made an exacta box, took the 5 longest prices in that race, made a trifecta box, took the 6 longest prices in that race and made a superfecta box and bet that vertically, if that was your opinion, just randomly, right? And you had a good opinion about that race was an all because the 70 to 1 shot had a chance and the favorites didn't have that good of a chance, they were vulnerable, right? You would make so much money vertically, you would need hire people to count it. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, if you just bet it blindly, like I said, if your opinion was that good to where you said, "Oh, I'm good at alls. I know when a price is going to come. That's why I use alls." If you're defending using alls, okay, that's the only way you can defend it, right? You can't defend it that it's good to do. The only way you can defend it is by saying, "I'm good at playing alls because I'm good at sniffing out when there's chaos in a race and a price is going to come," right? Well, if they played vertically and didn't even care about horizontally, like I said, if they were good at it, they'd win so much money they wouldn't be able to count it all because they're betting 250 to win on the 70 to 1 shot. And they're betting 250 to win on the 6 to 5 shot. So obviously by their bet, they love the 70 to 1 shot. They love the 40 to 1 shot. They love the 30 to 1 shot. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I'm sure you're gonna lead on to the next point that if they love those horses, then there's probably a better way to bet the horizontal.
Well, that's but I mean, that's obvious. But like, when you ask somebody when they use all, it's like, they tell you, well, everybody can win. Or they tell you, I can't pick the race. Or the only real answer is basically, I don't want to miss. Which
exactly.
That's the right answer. Yeah. And using all boils down to one thing. and it's strictly fear. It's fear of losing. And anytime you use all, there is no strategical all. Okay? Like there's no strategy of using all. There's no, there's no strategical all. It's strictly fear. You can't strategically use all. It's the only thing it is fear. And and like I said, if you used all, you said it. Why would you use the favorites if you think they can all be beat? It's just fear. You don't want to miss them. And so using all is like, I can't understand it. It's just, it's such a waste of money. It's if you like all, if you're going to use all in a sequence, you probably shouldn't play it. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, alls destroy almost anything good you can do in the other legs. I mean, if you go all and you catch a 2-1, you just lost 70% of your equity. If you go all and you catch a 4-1, you've lost 50% of your equity in a 10-horse field. I mean, it's just
so. If you're not going to use the all, let's talk about it. And it is a race where you think you need to spread, and you have good opinions in some of the other legs. What's the typical way you would approach the spread? How deep do you spread? What horses do you use? What's your approach there?
It's kind of like what we went back to the verticals. Like you want to find a grouping of horses. If you're spreading, most good spreads come from not using the favorites and using a grouping of horses that have a legitimate chance to win, that are overlaid because the favorite is underlaid, or you don't like him, or you don't like him for a reason which makes him underlaid to you. So like that's the thing, is like if you don't like a favorite, if you hate a 3 to 5, you better give yourself a chance to have the winner and not using one horse. You know what I mean? It's best to give yourself multiple chances, unless you just like the second favorite. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it sounds like you're willing to go spread pretty deep if you don't like the favorite. You don't want to get too cute.
I don't want to spread too deep, but I want to spread logical and common sense deep. Like I'm not ever using horses I don't like, and that goes back to the all thing. Never using horses I don't like. I'm never using horses that are severely undervalued. So I'm using horses I can make a case for horses I can make a case for that have a reasonable chance to win. And normally when you hate the favorite, all of those horses or most of them will fit into a grouping that will be overlaid over usage of the favorite. Is that because of the usage of the favorite, if that makes sense?
Because there's sort of value because the favorite's being overbet. And so it sounds like in that case, if you don't like the horse, you don't use it. If it's way underlay, you're not going to use it. But if it's borderline and you think it's a weak favorite, you don't want to leave that horse out and then get knocked out just because you're trying to get a little cute and cut the cost down a bit.
Yeah. No, when you don't like the favorite and that horse is going to have big usage in the sequence, you don't want to get too cute. Exactly. There's horses you'll leave out because you do not like them. Might be an 8-1 shot, might be a 5-1 shot you don't like for some reason, then leave it out. But don't throw out a horse that is borderline, on what you think might be its actual chances versus usage.
All right, this is great.
Because beating the favorite is your opinion in that leg, if that makes sense.
So let's take the opposite of that then. We talked about the spread. What about if you like a horse, you think he's going to be an overlay in the win pool, an overlay in the pick. It maybe has a 25% chance to win. is that the kind of horse you're willing to lean on as a single in your pick five? If that
Yeah,
were your opinion?
yeah, each situation's different. Like I get these discussions, like I think one of them came up a while ago, and like one of the other players you're probably going to have in your show in a few weeks. I'm just guessing. Like we got into a little bit of a thing about how like he had a horse that he gave a 40% chance to win that was like 6-5, and there was like a 7-2 shot that he gave a 30% chance to win, right? And like I argued that you should single the 7-2 with the 30% chance to win than to go too deep using the 40% and the 30%. And you know, if his percentages are right, he's like exponentially better singling the 7-2 shot than going too deep and adding the 40% chance at 6-5, because the 30% chance will win 3 out of 10 at 7-2, and the other one will win 4 out of 10 at 6-5. And you're much better having 2 units on the 7-2, obviously, in the long run. And I mean, that's just math, if that makes sense. So I would, even though the other horse has a better chance to win, I I would single the 7-2 if that's what my calculations showed. I don't make those calculations specific like that.
But
Just a
if you
general.
thought one was an underlay and one was an overlay, you would be
Correct. Even
playing the
though
overlay.
even though the 6-5 shot had a better chance to win,
Right.
I know that in the long run, I'm a better winning 30% at 7-2 with two units on that one instead of 1 and 1.
And
So
you kind of
that's
got at one of the other big pieces of math in the picks that maybe you want to talk a little bit about, and that is, when you could go from 2 horses in a race to 1 horse in a race, there's a lot of leverage there, right?
correct. You can double your bet, or you can use other horse and other legs that you can't get to, that are prices. I mean, if you have a budget, I mean, a lot of people, have a very limited budget, right? So if you single that 7-2 shot, then you might be able to use 4 in a race where you're 4 deep in another race. You now can maybe use 4 extra horses and get some 20 and 30 to 1 shots in there. You might think have a small chance. And that's where you can make the huge score. You can't make the huge score by keeping the 6-5 shot on. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's sort of the reason why we typically are playing these picks, is to try to make a score, right? We're not trying to chalk out and get our money
Well,
back.
yeah, that's what you're doing. You're trying to make a profit in the long run, and you get to the profit by not using the 6-5 shots when there's other options, when there's other better options. How's that? You should never use 6-5 shots when there's other better options in the race. I mean, that's just, that's like a steadfast rule you should live by. And when you think a 7-2 is going to win 30% of the chance, that's a better option than a 6-5 winning 40%.
So
Like that, you just need to lean. Those are things you need to lean on. Like they just need to be automatic in your thinking. You don't even need to think twice about it. It's just like you look at it, you say, "Here's a situation. I need the bet. The best thing for me to do long term is to single the 7-2 shot. Might not work out today. It might be that 40%, but in the long run, I know it's the best option.
So
Mathematically, it's the best option, obviously. That's the key.
So like a pick 5 is tough to hit, right? I mean, when you do the math, if you're trying to bet efficiently and make decisions like the one you just talked about, you know that it's going to reduce the hit rate for that bet. What's a realistic kind of target for frequency that you're going to cash the pick 5 and still bet efficiently? I mean,
Yeah, these are questions that are above my pay grade. Like I can't put an answer on that. It all depends on how each individual plays, And I give you a perfect example. somebody might play pick 5 and they might play 4 units, right? And like it might be a great ticket with 4 units, you know. Well, I can't tell him what his hit rate needs to be or her, and it's like it's all dependent on how you play. It's just if you play all chalk on spread tickets, your hit rate needs to be astronomical. If you play Tommy Massa style, singling 15 to 1, 15 to 1, then your hit rate basically needs to be once every few months. Or what, I mean, that's the hit rate, is I think that kind of stuff is so overblown, like it means nothing. It all depends on how you're playing, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. It definitely is a function of how aggressive your tickets are.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's different. That's the thing, is every sequence has a different way to correctly attack it. So if you look at a sequence and your ticket might be 8 units and say, that's what I'm playing, right? And you look at another ticket, or you look at another sequence and it's like, oh my God, I'm at 8,000 units and I have no idea. I says, it's like, yeah, I mean, like each sequence is different. It's not the hit. Once you leave the win pool, the hit rate is irrelevant.
Okay. It's such a function of the way you're attacking the sequence.
Yeah, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like I said, it's just the hit rate. It's all the only thing that matters in pick X sequences is that you're giving your best chance with your tickets to show a long-term profit. And then you can play one ticket, you can play 30 tickets in a sequence. There's so many variables to each sequence that, like I said, they're very complicated. It's very complicated. Pick 5s are, however complicated most people think pick 5s are, you can times it by 1,000 and they're still not even close. Pick 6 is the same thing. They're just so complicated. The only time pick 6s aren't complicated is like when there's a huge carryover and you're just playing like a big caveman ticket just to try to hit it. And that's where it becomes less complicated, but those are few and far between. And it's not something that 99.9% of people can do. So that's not even relevant to pretty much any conversation. If that makes sense.
Just one last thing I want to touch on this is just the weighting your bets. It sounds like you do that, or press. Any discussion on how you approach that part?
Yeah, in verticals, you always want to try. In verticals, when you have an opinion, like to try to beat the favorite, okay? And as I discussed a little bit earlier, your first bet should be like aiming at the center of the green. And then like your next set of bets should be pin hunting. And so you'll have two different sets of wagering. And you might even have 3, the first one might be aiming at the center of the green. The second one might be aiming like 10 feet to one side of the pin. And the other one might be aiming right at the pin. Okay, so you might have 3 sets. So that's what you want to do. It's never wrong if you have an opinion. Like if you don't like a favorite and you love a horse, then it's never wrong just to aim at the pin by keying that other horse. But you have to love, like I said, if your opinion is just that you hate the favorite and you don't love another horse, you should aim for the center of the green on your first set of bets, and then you can press from there. But if you hate a favorite and you love another horse in the race, then go for it. Aim at the pin, key your other horse, and go for it. But don't force that opinion. That's what I said. If you hate the favorite, don't just say, well, I'm going to bet this horse because he looks the best of the rest. And, he's 15-1 and I'm just going to bet him to win. Like, while you'll be okay there, in the long run, you're going to have big variance and you're not going to be able to pump out the volume in a race if your opinion's good at hating the favorite. You know, I mean, if you can bet, you know, let's say, I mean, it's tough for me to say, but let's just say you can bet $200 in a race, playing some 50-cent super boxes, dime try box, 50-cent try boxes, dime super boxes, and then come back and press some 50-cent dollar tries, maybe some dime 20-cent super boxes, and you could bet a couple $100 in a race. And because you hate the favorite and you've got a good opinion on that, and the ROI on your other grouping of bets is like plus 15%, well, that's great. If you do that, you're going to be fine over the long run. But if you just bet like 100 to win on a 15-1 shot, your ROI might be 15%, but you're going to have big variance, and it's tough to scale from there. You can scale up on all the other stuff better when you're not having that huge variance. Like, you'll go from betting 50-cent tries and dime supers to the next step will be betting dollar tries and 20-cent supers. And then you'll be able to scale up to $2 tries and 50-cent supers. Whereas if you're just betting win, it's just going to be such a long grind to where you aren't going to be able to scale up. So that's another thing that needs to be understood. Like, if you want to be a professional that being able to scale things up is a key to where you're going to start making real money doing this.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I've talked about this before. EV is great, but if you're like a professional, you're not just trying to get a high EV, you want to make money. And, that involves, betting more and maybe sacrificing a little bit of your EV for more profit. Is that kind of aligned with what you're saying here?
To a point. You never want to sacrifice. You're not really sacrificing a lot of EV. You're widening. You're making 100 bets with 15% EV instead of one.
Although
it doesn't. If you do it right, it doesn't really reduce your EV because the basket is your EV. If you threw the favorite in, that would reduce your EV. If you're doing it right, it's not really reducing your EV because each bet's an individual. If there's 100 bets in a race with 15% EV and you bet all 100, then you got to understand, like, it's doing thing. Sorry, I don't mean to mean 100 bets with 15% EV, but you understand what I'm saying. I mean,
yeah, and I do, and what I meant was like, go ahead.
If you bet all the top tier bets in a race, right? You could pick out one. You could pick out one and might have, the same EV. You might have a tad more EV, but like I said, if you make a win bet in that race, it might have the same EV as your basket of bets. Okay, but my basket of bets is reducing variance, and it's creating quantity, and it's creating volume. All right. So and it's creating scalability. So the basket has the same EV as the win bet. So you're not really reducing EV by doing the basket of bets.
Yeah, and I call it a portfolio, but the same thing. It gives you the ability to exploit more pools and bet more. And I totally agree with everything you're saying. It's just like, if you had a strong opinion on one horse, you could just key that horse. And
that's what I said. That's great. There's no problem with that.
Right.
Yeah. If you
press it, but if you're going to press it, you could just like only shoot for the pin.
Yeah, that's what I said. So that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that believe me, I have no problem with that. If you hate a favorite and you love a horse in the race, then just aim for the pin with that horse. And it's not just a win bet. You'd be keying him in some tries and supers and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you're keying him. You're keying that one horse. That horse has to win or run second or something. You know,
Yeah.
there's no, if he's not first or second, you're out, you lose. And that's fine. That's great. That is, you know, what we talked about earlier when I was a younger kid. When I was a kid, when I was younger, that's what I would do, right? But the game has changed now with, you know, with rebates and everything being a little more efficient. How's that?
It makes perfect sense. And absolutely.
Yeah. So the game, like I said, back in the old days, you could handicap yourself to where you could do that 7 races a night, have an opinion that was stronger than everybody else, or 7 races a day where you had a better opinion than everybody in the joint, and everything you were betting was plus EV. Nowadays, it's not like that. Game's changed.
So talk a little bit more about that. It's changed, and you get the rebates. Is it pretty much going to this more of a basket approach? Is how you changed the way you play, or is there anything else that you've changed in response to that?
Yeah, a little more selectivity, and mainly on field size. You know, it's just very tough to beat short field races. Like, I know Marshall was on here earlier, and he said he likes shorter fields because it reduces variance, but I'm the complete opposite. I would never tell anybody to do that. I mean, he gets away with it because he probably has a good opinion and he just keeps things very tight. But the normal person, the normal person, especially the normal person, like trying to go forward and build a bankroll, doesn't want to do it that way. It would be impossible. But yeah, the what were we talking about here? I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Well, how you changed your approach to, you talked about, now that you have rebates and it's harder to, get good opinions, how that's changed the way you play.
Yeah. Well, like I said, back in the day, if you were sharp, you could handicap your way to success. Like, there were no trip notes, there were no optic DQ stuff. There were nobody watching tapes, very few people watching tapes. The stuff in the racing form was wrong. Just, if you watch films and you kept notes of horses and you knew, you did your work, you were sharper than 99% of the other people. Nowadays, people can pay $20 and be just as sharp as somebody that does all the work. And that's one way the game's changed. Plus back then there were no speed figures, stuff like that. I mean, there were no. I'm pretty sure the buyer figures weren't in the form back then. They had the speed figures in the form, but they were the same ones that are in the form now. They're the biggest joke ever. And like, there just was no information. There was no information to make the regular player sharp. They just bet off what the past performances and tips out of the newspaper and stuff like that. I mean, there was no pre-race discussion. There was no trip discussion or anything like that on TV or anything like that. I mean, you can handicap your way to sharpness and just go race by race and just, be better than everybody. Nowadays, it's different. There's just so much information out there. There's, everybody's way sharper. So you've got to be sharper than them by understanding how to bet and do it correctly. Because people back when I first started, there were people that didn't know how to bet that were sharp that still did okay. Nowadays, they'd have no chance. Just to put that into perspective.
So you touched on how the pools are sharper. The other thing you haven't mentioned is the computer teams.
Yeah.
and how they've been growing and how they correct odds and things like that. Does that affect the way you play? How do you factor that into what bets you're going to make, if at all?
Yeah, it doesn't affect me that much because I don't I don't they're real prolific in win and exactas. I don't play that much in that, and they will attack like force outs and stuff like that. But just normal try supers and you know pick fours, pick fives, carryovers, they do attack, but they're not. I don't think they're as efficient in those types of wagers as they are on their other types of wagers. In fact, I've had a couple experiences with them, and I kind of figured out where they're. And when I say experience, I've just had talks with a couple people involved, and I kind of can gain where their inefficiencies are in some spots. But it doesn't really have an effect on me. I don't try to handicap what they're going to do. I know they're speed oriented. I know that they have some problems with groupings of horses in tries and supers to where horses that shouldn't be grouped together, but they don't know how to separate them. Such as, like, let's say there's a race with three speeds, and the three speeds are the three favorites. Well, I know that the odds of the three speeds running 1, 2, 3 in that case are way less than what their projected odds are in the gimmicks. Just because of race shape, and that when speeds don't make the lead, or they don't get their way, or they're abused, that they do not run second, third, fourth. They're out of the number a lot of times. So, and the computer guys were having a hard time quantifying stuff like that because they have a set percentage on what the horse's chances are, and it doesn't really put everything together. I mean, maybe they fix stuff like that. I don't think they have, because it's very tough to fix.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. They typically derive those other prices based on the win odds.
Yeah,
I
and
think
that's
what
how
you're saying, that throws them off because
yes, that's how
not
they
the
play.
correlation you'd expect between place and show and win for certain types of horses, right?
Correct. And when you see a race like that, and you look at exacta prices, and they're the 6 lowest exacta prices, then you know that the computer's playing into that pool. They haven't quite figured it out yet. So just stuff like that. I mean, there's just little stuff like that I know, but then the public doesn't know that either. So, the public, if there's, like I said, if there's a race and there's 3 speeds, and they're 2-1, 5-2, and 7-2 or something, and I just know, from experience, and that they're not the odds of them finishing 1, 2, 3 are not going to be the same odds as their odds are, or how they're bet in the gimmicks, because people will be including all of them in their exactas and tries together. How's that? And those combos are going to be severely overbet, which are going to leave other combos underbet. So that's a place to attack. Yeah, just stuff like that. Like with the computers, like I said, I know they have some holes, because it's very tough to get everything right. When and exacta stuff like that, they're very honed in on. Pick fives are very good at scraping the pools on just layering their combos on win percentages, which it doesn't really. They're not taking anything into account besides that. So it's basically just when they do that, it's just seek and destroy. It's just like they're covering every combo for X amount, and they scale it. They can scale it according to what they perceive the horse's chances are in each legs, and their program, it runs it. It takes what their percentages are in each leg, and it shows them how much to play each combo for on each combo. And they're efficient on that, but they're a little bit barbaric on what we talked about, where there's some there's some sequence idiosyncrasies which you need to attack or avoid. How's that? And so I don't really let the computers affect me, because I just know they're going to be very efficient in the win pool and the exacta pool, and those are two of the least I play, and I know they're kind of stone hands in the pick fours, pick fives, pick sixes, but they're going to do well. So I just I can't let it affect what I do, except for a few scenarios like I told you, with the speed horses and stuff like that. So
you mentioned carryovers. It sounds like you do target those. Do you how do you attack those differently than a normal bet without the carryover? And will you play at tracks or a sequence or a race that you wouldn't normally play just because there's a carryover?
Yeah, I will play most carryovers. There's some I'm not really interested. I'll look at, but I'm like when Gulfstream forces out their mandatories, and I'm not really interested. I'll look, but unless I can see a path to something I like, or something that looks good to me in the sequence, I'll stay away. But I do gravitate towards most carryovers, and I will play. I'll look at most carryovers, and I'll play a lot of them. I just think the carryovers. I think the carry and I'm included, but I think the carryovers bring a lot of people into the mix that they either get a little bit out of their comfort zone or don't know how to construct tickets properly, and they also play tracks that they're not familiar with. So, well, I think I think the carryovers bring in the carryovers. Well, you're starting out with extra money, and then the wave of public money is not sharp. And as I've expressed, the computer money I don't think is real sharp either. So I'm not scared of any carryover pretty much at any track. I have to look at it and like something to play, but I'll even force my way into where if I kind of like it, I'll play. But I can usually kind of like something. I'll play it in some form. Sometimes I'll attack it. Sometimes I'll just play, certain spots. So it all depends. But I'll usually look to play it, and usually will find something at most of them. Yeah.
So is there any particular ones you like the most? You like a big carryover at a major track, or a smaller carryover at a smaller track, or you like a carryover on a super high five or a pick five? I mean, does it really matter, or do you go after them all, or is there some that you prefer over others?
I like anything at smaller tracks. I love force out at smaller tracks. Force outs at smaller tracks. I like any carryover at smaller tracks, and that's one of the reasons is we just talked about is it brings people that track that aren't familiar with it. I think the carryover at smaller tracks are way better than carryovers at bigger tracks, just because of that reason.
Are you familiar with the smaller tracks? Do you have familiarity? Is that something
I have familiarity with some smaller tracks? Yeah, like I like my schedule. My schedule is like where I play mostly at night, and it's always been that way. Like night's always been like my big time. I used to play all day, all night, but my results have always been better at night because I don't know. I just have a better familiarity with night tracks and stuff like that. And also, like I said, a lot of people play at night that shouldn't be playing. Like they'll get stuck during the day and they'll play at night, or they'll just play it at night for entertainment because they're home with nothing to do. So the money's less sharp at night. I mean, that's my theory. I'm sure I'm right. I know I'm right. So TVG showing a night track, there's a ton of uneducated money in the pool. So I've gravitated towards night tracks pretty much all my life. And now, like, night is my best time to play. I'll play some during the day. I'll take breaks during the day or whatever. I have not like the old days when I had no responsibility, but yeah, I like smaller tracks. I like night tracks. I like tracks on Monday, Tuesday that people don't play normally, but they're just playing because they're Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah, I mean, I try to go like, I'm never looking to just bet a full card of New York, Florida, Kentucky, just because they're running. Like those are like the last stops that my train goes to. How's that? And like I don't even yeah, and I don't even care if I ever look at races there.
So that that basket approach you take really is important then at those smaller tracks, right?
Because yeah.
Like, smaller.
Yeah, and like I told you that that's what I told you. The amounts varies to whatever track I'm playing. I can't play. I don't want to be playing $3 supers with 330 to one shots and stuff like that, and $30,000, $20,000 super pools. And like you just like Indiana's going to start here. That's a good track. That's a good track for people to do some workout and have an edge on other people. They're having two good pick fives, 11.99%, which is good. Their takeout on their other bets is okay. I mean, I think 18 on one place and show 22 on everything else, which isn't great, but better than some tracks. But there's just if you find a track like that, you do your work. They have 12 horse main fields all the time. If you watch tapes and stuff, you'll be way ahead of the crowd. I don't do that, but I'm just telling people what they could do. Like there's just so much greener grass out there than the tracks people normally gravitate to. But for some reason, they want to play tracks where they are playing against people that they shouldn't be playing against. Yeah, like that's one thing I would tell people to do. I mean, I do it now just because back when I was just started the rebate, I wanted to bet the bigger tracks because I could scale up and bet as what I was betting a lot of money, and I didn't have to worry about crushing my own prices and stuff like that. And like I said, I'd start early in the day with Tampa, New York tracks, Gulfstream, on to Santa Anita, and all the nighttime tracks, Meadowlands Harness, Mountaineer. Mountaineer was actually great back then. Los Alamitos, just every track from basically 9 till midnight. And but like I said, things have changed now. The product has deteriorated. Product is way worse than it used to be. Field size is down. Contention, and not only is field size down, but depth of field is down. Like, I mean, there used to be 10 horse races where 8 horses had a legitimate chance. Now you have an 8 horse fields where 3 horses have a chance. I mean, it's just not like it used to be. And prices have gone up. Takeout is, I mean, there's some low takeout bets, but for the most part, takeout hasn't gone down any. Some tracks they've gone up, obviously. But yeah, it's become tougher. just everything, rebates have gone down, at least for normal people. They're still pretty good for the elite people and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just a tougher game. It's a tougher game. You need to pick your spots. You need to find spots that are more lucrative than the tougher spots. I try to explain to anybody that if you're breaking even playing, Aqueduct, Gulfstream, Keeneland, then you could do way better playing tracks like Indiana, Charlestown, stuff like that. I mean, the lesser tracks, Turfway, just because there's less sharp money there, and the computers are completely vandalizing the pools at places like that for the normal player.
So that's kind of like game selections, what you're talking about, right? Go where the competition's not quite as strong, and you have a better chance.
Yeah, there's also race selection. Like, there's a lot of bad races there's just a lot of short fields and bad races at a lot of the big tracks nowadays. And because that's the track that people play, they bet those races. Like that, I've told this many times, is knowing what races to pass is like one of the biggest things you can do to make yourself a winner. Like, that's game selection. Game selection is race selection. It's like, you have to know when I'm not making a bet in this race. And nowadays, back when I was a kid, if you went to Santa Anita and there were 9 races, and you bet 8, people would look at you like, how the hell could you pass one race? And it's like, nowadays, if you look at 9 races in Santa Anita and you bet 3, people are going, how could you fucking bet 3 races on that card? It's like, there wasn't a playable race on the card. And that's how the game's become. It's you need to go to places like Turfway where they have full fields or fuller fields. Indiana has not every race is full, but they have some real good full fields. There's just, you need to go to places that give you opportunity. And the more places you go, like if you look at 5 tracks a day and take the best 3 races from all 5 of those tracks, then that gives you 15 races a day to play. Whereas if you look at Aqueduct and Gulfstream and you play 15 races there, 10 of the races you're playing are hideous. That's just how it is.
So you keep going.
The more you broaden your horizons and the more tracks you play, gives you more opportunity, but you also have to know what races to pass. And when you look at races nowadays, there's almost no track that's running, except maybe Turfway, where I wouldn't say that passing more races than playing races would be passing more races than playing races would be the correct thing to do. How's that?
So kind of leading into that, the deterioration in the quality of the product, do you play the foreign races at all? Do you play Hong Kong or Australia or Europe? If so, how big a part of your play is that?
I just dabble in Hong Kong once in a while out of boredom. That's it. Yeah, but nothing serious. I've looked into Hong Kong. I've had an offer to go over there and set up a betting deal, but I passed. Just I'm past the point of like I said, I have responsibility now, and that would be a major undertaking, and I've become lazy and I don't want to do much anymore, and so that's just too time consuming and too much responsibility. And playing a place like Hong Kong, you would want to do it the right way, and the right way would be going over there or setting up betting accounts over there. You'd be having to go over there and come back or stay over there. And yeah, I can't do it. I don't want to do it. So, but I mean, for the normal person, for a regular person, Hong Kong would be good. I mean, yeah, they have the most information, everything you need at your fingertips. If somebody was just starting out or wanted to try to win, Hong Kong's a great spot. I mean, you can watch everything right on their website. They have, they have every race, every angle, every workout, every trial race. Everything is right there if you want to put in the time and effort. Plus going back to, what I kind of talked about earlier, they have a limited horse population. And if you can really get sharp and know every one of their horses, which if you put in the work, that's definitely possible. Then you can, it's a great place to play. Their wagering menu is good, but not all the places here take all the bets. We don't really have so far, we don't have any place that takes all the bets. How's that? Each specific place takes some of the bets. I think maybe Canada takes all the bets, but I'm not even sure if they take all the bets. Wager to Win here takes most of the bets, I think, but ExpressBet, TVG, Twin Spires, they don't take all the bets. They take different bets. It's very weird how it's set up. So you've got to overcome that hurdle too. But yeah, Hong Kong would be a place that somebody could really delve into and try that. Yeah, even simplistic stuff there. If you have a good opinion, you could probably do okay. I don't, win betting. I'm not big on the Quinellas, which is what they have, and then they have tries, which are fine. But yeah, you could probably develop an opinion there and be okay. But yeah, I mean, I like night tracks, but that's too late and too much work for me. I would have to actually do some work on that, and I can't look at the form. I have no instinct for it. That's kind of what I get by on American racing that I bet. It's just, like I said, most of my handicapping is instinct. So I don't really have any instinct there. So I would have to do work. So it's not for me, but it would be a good place to start for other people, or a good place to go for other people. Give it a try. Because if you get good there, like I said, you can scale up, and you can they even have rebates over there if you go through them. So, and the way they work, they're actually decent if you know how to work the system right. So, but that's a ways off if you're just starting. So, but it's opportunity. But it's opportunity. That's the thing. There's not a lot of opportunity in American racing. So Hong Kong does provide opportunity if you want to 5 or 10 years down the road, you want to say, hey, I want to do this professionally or something.
So kind of a similar question. We got the Kentucky Derby coming up, and most tracks have like big days, big cards. Do you chase those at all? And in particular, with the Derby coming up, are you going to be betting on that Derby card with the big pools, or on the Derby itself, or is that just not your cup of tea, or just another track? I'm curious how you approach those.
I don't even care, but I don't even care about the Derby. But like you said, all the other tracks that I play have good cards and a lot of money, or more money than usual, I should say, and that's where I focus. So I play other tracks on Derby Day because, like I said, most of the tracks put out a good card on Derby Day, and every track in the country is filled with people in the stands on Derby Day. and they're all betting the races at the track and their track, and also Churchill. But there's a lot of extra money. So Derby Day, I am completely focused, but it's not on the Derby.
What about at some of the tracks you do play, say like Indiana Downs or Turfway on their big days, where they stack the card? Is that something that you'll target differently or just play it like another day?
I play those like another day. The only thing is that, when they do have those days, pretty much every race is playable. Like most of the races are full fields and whatever. So you aren't just turning the page on 4 races or something like that. So you got to do a little more in-depth stuff. And and I still on big days only target vertically unless there's a carryover. So I don't really attack the races on a big day. I just kind of do it normally. But I find myself betting more races. How's that? Because there's more opportunity. There's more full fields, stuff like that. Yeah. Same thing on Derby Day with the smaller tracks and the lesser tracks. There's more opportunity because it's Derby Day, and they always try to put together good cards on Derby Day.
So you live in Las Vegas. I'm guessing you might do some other types of gambling. I think you sort of mentioned it already. Are there any other forms of gambling that you do? And is that a significant part of your play? And how has that informed the way you tackle the horses, if at all, or vice versa?
I bet some sports, but I'm very limited in my sports betting. I play sports. Sorry. Now I'm very limited in my sports betting. I play sports kind of like a horse handicapper with an opinion. Mostly hockey, maybe a little baseball. I used to play sports for a while. Seriously, that's an all-day job when you're doing it right. So you can't really do that and horses. You kind of got to focus on sports. But I don't do that anymore just because I hated dealing with the sports, getting paid, not getting paid, stuff like that, having to deal with just guys you hate, people you hate. So, but then all the sports books started taking racing heavily. So I started attacking the racing, and I would try to play sports at a lot of them, just trying to look like a sucker in sports, trying to get my racing accounts to last longer. I mean, trying to look like a sucker, but not really being a sucker, but just trying to look unsharp in sports. How's that? So, because back then, people thought that your average bookmaker thought that nobody could beat the races. How's that? And so there was if you look like a non-sharp in sports, which was more up their avenue, because that they could tell sharps from squares in sports. If you look like a square in sports, then they'd really think you were square in horses also, but somehow you would just be winning by luck, and they let you keep playing for a long time before they barred you. So I played sports like that. But now I play the odd hockey game once in a while. Sometimes I'll do some work and whatever, play a little baseball, just when there's not a lot going on in racing, usually Mondays, Tuesdays. And I play poker. I haven't played poker recently, but for a while I was playing a lot of poker here. I got into one of the big games in town and played that for a couple years. And the only problem was with that at first was it was usually on the weekends, which were race days and nights. So but the poker was so good that I gave up the racing, even though I kind of bet from my there were certain times I bet from my chair on my iPad. So I was kind of trying to do both a little bit. But but I'm not playing the poker anymore. So I'm just kind of focused on racing. I don't really have time for anything else right now. So I kind of got to be flexible with when I play racing. Yeah, like some days I don't even play at all now, just busy. So uh, like I said, just things have progressed to where, like, I've got responsibilities and I don't I don't have, but whenever I get any free time, I roll into my office and see what's going. And when I get up in the morning and get around, I'll see if there's any carryovers that I want to play. And if there's nothing that interests me, I just won't bother coming in until I have nothing to do. So yeah, it's not, while it is what I do, it's not the end all be all like it used to be.
So from your poker and sports betting, did that change the way you think or look at the horse playing? Or, I'm just curious if you learned anything from poker that
Yeah,
you apply to horse play.
yeah, for sure. There's way more. There's way more. What when you when you learn gambling theory, like poker, sports, and pretty much any other gambling game, like the theories are all interchangeable. It's just that the theories on horse racing are more complex, and nobody ever teaches anybody the theories. And all the people that talk about the theories to the masses are wrong. But yeah, there's definitely, like, when you're playing poker and you're talking to other people playing poker, the people playing poker are way smarter about poker than the other horse players that you talk to about horse playing. Like, there's a level of expertise that's higher than horse playing expertise. Like, like, you know, when I say that, it's everything incorporated. It's the handicapping and the wagering aspect. Same with poker. Like, it's the understanding of strategies and the just the wagering theories and stuff like that. And there's more advancement in poker and sports. Well, sorry, there was more sports advancement. Now it's become duller than it was. Now that the entire world can bet on sports, or the entire country can bet on sports. But back when you were just talking to people who played sports, uh, they understood it more than, there was more upper level thinking. How's that?
That
Amongst
makes
poker and
sense.
sports, amongst
So,
poker and sports than there is in horse racing.
so maybe an example of like a theory in poker versus a theory in horse racing. I mean, can you give me an example when you say the theory, what you mean?
Um, well, just being like, people aren't afraid to be aggressive, and people aren't afraid to be aggressive in poker because they know in the long run that's correct. Where in horses, people know that playing the favorite defensively in poker, you're going to lose. People in horse racing don't know that playing the favorite defensively means you're going to lose. No, means you're going to lose. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Like like aggression in poker is good. Aggression in horse racing is looked upon as bad by most, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I absolutely see where you're going.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know how to state it. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't, like I said, I don't know how to, I don't, I, I'll give you an example. Okay. let's talk about tournaments for a second. All right. Tournament, real money tournament. Okay. And I know that Matt touched upon this, and he's right. But if you took a poker player and put him in a horse racing tournament, and they knew nothing about horse racing, they would have a better chance to win than 90% of the people in the horse racing tournament. Now, most people would think I was crazy, but I'm telling you, they would immediately understand that all the tournament is leverage and math. Okay? And the best way I can explain it to you is they would understand that it has nothing to do that even though they don't know how to handicap or they don't know anything about horses, it's just a mathematical equation to get to a number. Okay? And they would understand if I talked to them for 5 minutes that if your starting bankroll is 2,500, okay, and you need to get to 25,000, which is probably a winning number in a lot of them. It's definitely a podium in almost all of them. Okay. And I said, okay, here, you need to get 2,500, 25,000. Okay. They would realize that like they need to make one bet or two bets or whatever to get to that number. And like there's no betting the minimum. Minimums don't even count because the only times you bet the minimums is when the money didn't matter. So they would understand that like, okay, I'm going to pull numbers out of a hat. I'm going to put all the 2-to-1 shots in the card into a hat. Okay. I'm going to pull 2 of them out. All right. I'm going to bet those 2. I don't even know who they are, but I'm going to bet those 2. I have a 2,500 to win on the first one. It pays 640. Okay. I get back 8,000. All right. Now I bet 8,000 to win on the next one. It pays 640. Now I've got 25.6. Okay. All I've done was pick 2-to-1 shots out of a hat. But if they both win, I'm at 25.6. Now, is that handicapping? No. All that is math and leverage. Now you could take 90% of the people that play those tournaments and they'd have to pick every winner, every bet they make, and they still might not to get to 25,000. Meanwhile, you got a poker player who understands math and leverage, and he's picking 2-to-1 shots out of a hat, and if they both win, he's at 25.6. Poker play, a winning poker player would understand that. Somehow horse players don't understand. Tournament horse players don't understand that. It has nothing to do with betting $400 this race, $400 this race, $400 this race. All it is taking 2,500 and moving it to 25,000. The same way, you would do with tournament chips in a poker tournament. You want to get everybody's chips the best way you can, and big bets usually do that. Aggression usually do that. You know what I mean? So it's gambling theory, has nothing to do with horses or handicapping. All it is understanding math and leverage. So that's what I'm saying. Is you take a poker player who's very smart, if you took a poker player who's a winning sports bettor, who is a DFS guy, and you explain the horse tournament to them, that's what they would do. They wouldn't even open a forum. They wouldn't even look at a race. If I talked to them for 5 minutes and told them that, I told them I just explained things to them, that's what they would figure out stuff like that. And like you tell horse players that, and they look at you like you're crazy. Meanwhile, all you got to do is pick 2-to-1 shots out of a hat. You're at a winning number. Doesn't even matter who they are. It's just you're assuming the market's correct, which the market's going to be sharper than they are. So they're assuming the market's correct on the prices. So that's the best way I can explain it to you, how gambling theory is so much sharper in other avenues of gambling than it is in horse racing. I mean, you can tell me I'm right or I'm wrong. I know I'm right, but I mean, other people would tell me I'm wrong, but I'm not. I mean, if you pick 2-2-1 shots out of a hat and you got to what would be a normal winning number, I mean, aren't they have a better chance than 90% of the people playing it? And like I said, I know you play these things and I don't want you to be offended or anything. I'm just trying to explain the logic of how a person who understands the leverage and the math of it is better at it than the people who are horse players.
Yeah, and the thing you said about the horse players don't understand the gambling side. Well, it's not surprising in that pretty much all the literature and discussion and everything is about, picking winners and handicapping and not about the betting. So it's not surprising that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you read a book about poker, there's a lot about, the gambling and strategy and stuff.
Well, no, that's what I'm trying to say. Is like a poker player, a sports bettor, I'm not talking about I'm talking about sharp poker players, sports bettors. They would understand the math and the leverage immediately. And if anybody paid attention, they would have looked at those DraftKings tournaments where they had the sports tournaments, right? Where they had the live bankroll. And the sports bettors just knew to attack. Like every bet was their whole bankroll the whole way through, right? I don't know whether you watched the couple of those they had. They had the sports betting tournaments just like the horse tournaments.
Yeah, I remember there was one with a lot of controversy and stuff too.
Yeah, where they didn't get bets in. Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah. But if you watch the sports bettors, they knew that the first bet was their whole bankroll, the second bet was their whole bankroll, the third bet was, you know what I mean? And like horse players, everybody in the sports tournament knows that's the strategy. But the horse players, they think their first bet is 400, whatever the minimum is. And like, that's somehow they don't understand the concept. Like if they were in a blackjack tournament where the person who won the most money in the blackjack, the person who had the biggest total at the end of the blackjack tournament, they would watch people next to them betting their whole roll, like on their second or third hand or something, and they'd be looking at them like they're crazy because they don't understand the power of leverage. And like I said, Matt touched upon it. He understands it. He doesn't. He didn't quite explain it like that, but he understands it. He knows you've got it. He knows you've got to basically get from here to here the best way. And like he understands it. He also said the same thing I'm saying, is that nobody else understands it. It's like, and like that's the thing. It's like you can't. That's what people in other gambling arenas understand, but horse players don't.
And that's a great point. It's a great point.
Yeah, and horse players would go, "Oh my God!" And like, if we just move it on to the Breeders' Cup, right? The Breeders' Cup betting challenge, all right. So if your starting bankroll is 7,500 instead of 2,500, okay. Instead of having 25.6, you bet 7,500. So now you'd have three times. You used to have 3 times that because the starting bankroll is 3 times. So now after 2-2-1 shot, you'd have 76,800. So now you got to find 2-2-1s and an even money shot gets you to 153.6, right? So now 2-2-1s and an even money shot gets you 153.6. If you want to be real outlandish, you can find another 2-1 shot, and that'll get you to like 230, 240. All right, with breakage. if that's like 640. So it's like 3 2-to-1 shots, leveraging your whole bankroll, pulling numbers out of a hat at the Breeders' Cup gets you to 230, 40,000. That would win almost every year. 150 would win almost every year. 75 would have won a few years. 2 2-to-1 shots. And like poker players would understand that. Horse players don't understand that. If you look at all the horse players that play those tournaments, they're all making hundreds of bets. Meanwhile, the poker player would make 2 plus they'd have to navigate the minimums. But that's navigating minimums isn't tough to do when you cashed a 200 when you cash one of your bets on the first day early.
Yeah, if you get in an early bet, you're either out of the tournament or the minimums don't really matter. So
yeah, exactly. And like poker play, every other gambling sharp in every other gambling arena would understand that. Horse players don't. Sorry, tournament horse players don't. How's that? I'm not saying all of them, but 90% of them don't. How's that?
No, and that was a really good example of comparing the two. That was great. Couple more questions, man. You've been great for someone who's sick. I can't believe you've hung with me this long. I really appreciate it. Just a couple more things. What would you say is like the most important thing that's helped you be successful, and what's the biggest lessons learned that you've had in your the years you spent playing horses?
Learning no fear when I was younger. That's probably the most important thing. Not having no fear of losing your bet as long as you're making the correct bet. Other thing that's probably helped me is just being well-rounded, knowing how to understand every bet that's offered. Sitting in the race book when I was 18, 19, 20 in Vegas from morning till night, betting races at all tracks. Just learning how to do that, learning how to have quick opinions, going through old charts and stuff and figuring stuff out, like how to how, if I saw like a big payout in something, I would sit down and figure out how could I have got to that. What wagering strategy coupled with my opinion could have got me to that payout. If I saw a superfecta that paid $10,000 for $1, I would sit down and I would figure what kind of strategy could have got me to where I could have hit that. I know people go back and look at races to where they say, well, how could I have had that horse, right? That means nothing. I shouldn't say it means nothing, but it helps you with handicapping. It doesn't help you with winning. When you go back and figure out wagering strategies that could have got you to payouts, that it's kind of like backfitting wagering strategy, but it's not like you're just learning creative ways to get to. You're learning creative ways to wager, and like that's the thing that teaches you the most. Watching other people's mistakes when I was younger, that was huge. Like I knew what not to do instantly. Like just being around the people around the racetrack. Like I would listen to people talk about what they were betting or how they were betting, and I'd say to myself, man, that's wrong. I mean, common sense tells me that's wrong. And like, that's seeing other people's mistakes is the easiest way to get better. And like, that's what I kind of do on Twitter. I point out other people's mistakes. It's so much better to have people make mistakes in front of you and be able to show them to other people and say, don't do this. This is wrong. This is terrible. And if people learn that, then they would make those same mistakes. Making less mistakes and learning what not to do is the absolute foundation to knowing what's right to do. Like, I remember Phil Goffman had an interview with, I think, Spanky a year ago or so, and everything he said about teaching poker was exactly what I say about racing. He said the most important thing to teaching somebody how to play poker is seeing them make mistakes and telling them that that's a mistake. And like, I listen to him, and it's like that's exactly what I say with horse racing, and everybody calls me negative and a hater and stuff like that. And here's like a poker crusher, one of the best teachers in the world, if not the best poker teacher, and he's saying the exact same thing that I say. And it's like, it's just, it tells me that I know what I'm doing, and I'm doing it right, and he's doing it right too. And like, it's the people that don't want to get better that say that I'm doing it wrong. I mean, I'm not criticizing them. I'm pointing out their mistakes. I mean, someone runs a red light and hits an old lady. I'm gonna say you shouldn't run the red light and hit the old lady. And like, that's what you do in racing. I mean, when I point out egregious tickets and terrible tickets, that's the same thing. You're making a huge mistake, and not only that, you're telling others to make the same mistake. And like, that's all I can do. I mean, I can't. And then, some of the time I expound on what's right to do. I kind of did it in here where I take one of their bad tickets and made it better. And, that's something they should do, but they don't know how to do it, or they don't care to do it, or they're told not to do it. I don't know what it is, but that's basically it. Just learn from your mistakes. I mean, you have to learn what's not right.
So a follow-on to that is, what do you think is the biggest mistake that most players make that if they could fix that would really improve their horseplay?
They're scared to lose. That's the biggest mistake I see day in, day out. They make bets where they don't have an opinion. They're kind of scared to lose. You can see it in their plays, I pointed one out the other day on that try box key, and like I had people screaming at me like I'm wrong. It's like, I'm not wrong. I know, like, I'm not wrong. It's like, you cannot key the favorite in that bet. You just can't do it. When you're keying the favorite, you have the favorite on every ticket. It's like, I don't care if that's your opinion. Your secondary opinion is you need a 10-1 or a 20-1 to be in the number. That's your opinion. You need to key that. Don't key the favorite. Use him secondary or third. But like I said, I mean, when people gravitate to the favorites, when their bet tells me that they don't that they don't trust the favorite, it's tough. There was a thread the other day where I said that keying the 8-5 shot in the try box key was incorrect. So basically, you're betting the play was $27. So you're playing $9 for him to win, $9 for him to be second, and $9 of it is for him to be third. Well, when you're playing $9 to be third, you're telling me that, I mean, you're basically saying that you don't trust. He's 8-5. I mean, you're playing 1/3 of your bet for him to be third. I mean, it's a 12-horse field, and it's like, then the next layer, he's got a 10 or 15, a 10 and a 20, a 9-1 and a 25-1, where one of them has to be first, second, or third. So that's the good part of his opinion. Key one of those horses. Don't key the 8-5 shot. Keying the 8-5 shot just tells me that, you're scared. I mean, if he keyed if it was a regular try and he keyed the 8-5 shot on top of the 9-1 and the 25-1 shot, that's fine. Then you're telling me the horse I like has to win. But he's not telling me that on that bet. He's telling me that he's using a third of the bet for him to show. Well, if he can run third, he can run fourth. If he can run fourth, he can run fifth. I mean, it's just logic. How could you ever do that? And like that bet is like, if it's not a fear bet, it's a stupid bet. It's either he doesn't understand the bet or it's fear, because he's using the exact same amount of 8-5 shot in all three places. It's just not. It's just not math. It's not logically right. If he didn't have any fear, he'd key him on top. He didn't have any fear. He'd key the 9-1 shot and the 25-1 shot. But the way he played the bet, it reeked of fear.
I like it. All right, I'll just about wrap it up here. One more question for you. This one, I'm not sure I should ask you. If you could wave a magic wand and change something about the racing game, what would you change?
I mean, there's so many things that change. I know you asked this question to everybody else. It's the same stuff. I mean, there's just so many. There's so many things they get wrong. I think the best way to change would just be to get rid of everybody in charge and start over. I mean, racing's so screwed up. It's just, I mean, there's just so many things wrong with it. I mean, everything from I mean, we need another 9 hours for this.
All right, we don't. I already feel bad.
Take out. I mean, just the most important thing is take out, obviously, pricing. Can't kill your customers. You can't kill your customers, old, new, or whoever. I mean, just nobody that isn't exceptionally exceptional has a chance to win long term. How's that?
I would totally agree with you. The pricing, I mean, it's not going to solve all the problems, but that's certainly a great place to start.
If you solve all the other problems and you still have terrible pricing, it's still going to be terrible.
That's right. Exactly.
You can't have a gambling game where one person out of 10,000 that walks in the door is going to be a lifetime winner. It's just, you can't do that. I mean, the lottery gets away with it, but that's different. Horse racing isn't the lottery. So, and horse racing doesn't have access like the lottery does. That's another thing. Horse racing has kept itself very sheltered. That's something else they don't understand. And they've sheltered their product because their pricing is so bad and they want to keep it so bad. They lowered their pricing. They could not shelter their product. They wouldn't have to shelter their product. They're trying to hold on to the 20+% takeout. And to do that, you have to shelter your product. That's why back in the old days, they didn't let you make calls at the track, and they didn't, everything to do with racing was sheltered forever. It still is. I mean, from people not being able to have access to data to bet the races. I mean, that's like Vegas charging you for the deck of cards to play blackjack at the table. I mean, just everything in racing is sheltered and protected, and that's why it can't grow.
Okay. Anything else before we wrap it up that we didn't touch on that you want to get in before we put a ribbon around this?
No, I'm good. I'm like I said, I could talk about stuff for days. So there's no end to the subject matter, and there's no end to talking about things that you can improve on, or wagering strategies or stuff like that. It's just, like I said, things are way more complicated than people think they are. And you need to you need to start thinking outside the box to be able to get to those spots where you can, be competitive or even profitable in this game. So that's one thing. That's the only thing I can tell you. I mean, but other than that, it's tough. I mean, I'm honest, it's tough. I would never suggest anybody to try to bet horse racing for a living from scratch or anything like that. The game's just totally screwed up right now. Pricing's terrible. I mean, the thought that people can't get access to rebates if they want them unless they bet certain amounts of money or whatever. I mean, it's just, the guy tells you, I want to bet, if somebody says I'm betting $100,000 a year or something like that, and I want a decent rebate, they're out there, but then you're going to be, there's going to be certain tracks you can't bet. If you live in a certain state, you can't get a rebate. I mean, that guy, if they got under the right circumstances, they might be a $3 million player in 5 years. You know what I mean? But instead, racing tells them, no, we don't want, stay at your 100 or go away. I mean, stuff like that. It's like, if takeout was lowered, they might be a $3 million player in 5 years. But racing doesn't do anything. Racing doesn't do anything to grow. That's all I can tell you. There's nothing they do to grow. And then, the people they have as the front. The people they have as the front. The people they have as their Walmart greeters are like, the people on TV, Todd Schruck. Like when you walk in the front door of racing, Todd Schruck comes and grabs you by the arm and says, I'm great at this. The all button is your friend, right? And then he passes you on. Then he passes you on to Andy, and Andy says, I'm the greatest handicapper there ever is. And if you don't use favorites you hate in horizontals, you're a nitwit. And then Andy passes you on to the next. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Like the people who walk in the door of racing and are greeted by the people who are the front people for racing have no chance before they just crumple and die. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, how many other businesses, when a new customer walks in the door, are they literally just literally thrown into the sharks? I mean, they're just crumpled. I mean, racing's like the only thing I can tell you. I mean, there's poker. I mean, when you go into the poker room and you never play poker there's a million people there to help you and teach you, and they tell you to play small until you get the hang of it, and then they point you to Galfond and other people you can learn from and get better. Racing doesn't have any of that. It doesn't have anything to help the person who walks in the door that likes it and wants to get better. They don't have any opportunity for them to do that. I mean, besides listening to something like this, which newbies don't, 1 out of 100 newbies get to this spot, if that, and it's like, they should be, when they get a new customer in the door, they should be doing everything they can to help them, to send them to spots where they can get better. And instead they send them to snake oil salesmen who are looking to do nothing but kill them because that's all they've done their whole life. They can't win. They've never won. I don't understand how racing looks to losers to teach their new customers how to win. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I know why they do it, but it's because the people who do the hiring don't understand. So, but yeah, I mean, and the losers convince themselves they're winners because they get a paycheck. That's their winning. But all they do is everything they say is detrimental to the growth of the new customer. And then all they do is shove tickets down their throats, which crush them. And I don't understand. I don't understand why racing goes out of their way to kill their new customers. I mean, it's bad enough that the takeout's so high, but then they kill them, in even a worse fashion with this. Give them some ideas and some thoughts, and places to go where they can, try to reduce takeout instead of make it higher from what the people in racing are teaching them. Yeah, that's it. That's my rant. That's it. I mean, that's just that. That's why we can't have any growth. I mean, every new customer that walks in the door gets slaughtered from takeout and from the snake oil salesman. I mean, that's all there is to it. I mean, think about it. I mean, I think about it. If when I started racing, they put a bunch of experts in front of me that I thought, that were deemed to me as being experts, I might have went for the bait. Probably not, but I might have. I might never bet the races again.
Well, fortunately, that wasn't the case because, I mean, you have a lot of information to share. This has been great. I do hope to have you on again because, like you said, I think I could keep talking to you for hours and we would never cover the same territory twice. But I really appreciate you hanging in with me. Being sick has been pretty amazing. You've been great.
I can't believe I got through this. I can't. I did great. I'm giving myself a pat on the back.
You did. Never would have known you were sick, and you kept the passion was there from start to finish. So I really appreciate it. I want to thank you. Definitely going to be asking you to come back. I think the listeners probably won't listen to this all in one sitting, but I think once they start listening, they're definitely going to want to listen through the whole thing because this is chock full of great information that's just not readily available out there. I kind of agree with everything you say about the lack of bringing new players in and giving them a chance to dip their toes in the water and stick around long enough to start feeling like they're on an upward trajectory, rather than kicking them out the door early. So
yeah,
your sentiment.
Yeah, whether they come in through the door of TV or whether they go to the track with somebody they know, even if they go to the track with somebody they know, when they come home, they're going to want to watch it on TV. So anyway they all get to TV, whether it's TVG or Fox or whatever, you know what I mean? So like all the new, they try to underestimate what kind of I don't even know how to say it. They try to downplay what kind of, just, God damn, what am I trying to say? They try. Now I'm done.
The impact of the
they're trying to downplay like the impact they have on new customers, but yet every new customer goes through them. I mean, like I said, if you go to the races, and you like it and you come home, you're going to watch it on TVG, right? If you don't go to the races, but if you're interested in horse racing and you see it on TV, you're going to watch TVG. I mean, I don't know how they can say that there's so many newbies that come into the game that don't even know who they are. I mean, I don't know how they try to say that. I mean, am I wrong? I'm asking you.
I don't know if they downplay it so much, but I mean, I absolutely agree with you, especially in this this day and age. And that fact that there is racing on television that's going to be where most of the new customers at least get their initial introduction to the game. And it's like you said, if they're interested, they're going to definitely try to find where they can learn more, and that's probably one of the first places they would go.
I mean, during COVID, it was like they had like 100% of the new customers. I mean, I don't understand how they downplay the impact they have on new customers. Like I said, I don't understand it. I mean, I don't think I'm wrong. I mean, people try to tell me I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. I think they have a profound impact on pretty much a high percentage of new customers, on how they think and how they're introduced to wagering on the game.
Yeah, they definitely have a strong influence. I don't think anyone could argue that. How strong, I guess you could debate it, but it's definitely, for the new players, a big part of it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know how they downplay it so much, and how they don't understand how important it is to cultivate that new customer into, being a long-term customer, through giving them information that keeps them around longer, instead of giving them information and tickets which instantly kill them.
Well, let's hope you've given the listeners to this podcast at least information that'll help them become better players, and maybe give them a chance to get better at the game. That was the whole intent of these podcasts. So I do really thank you, ITP. You were great. I'm sure all the listeners will feel the same, and they'll walk away with some real nuggets. So I appreciate you hanging in with me, even though you were under the weather. And I also appreciate all the listeners out there. You've been great. A lot of good feedback on the first few shows. I'm sure we're going to hear some great things about this one. Make sure you tell your friends. Give us some good likes and reviews out in social media. And most importantly, may you fearlessly, boldly go where no horse player has gone before.